So we already did the most underrated players in the Western Conference. Now we're moving on to the East. And again, we're going to be going in reverse order of the standings, so worst to first. But before we get started, I am about 300 subs away from 5K. Maybe 350 away at the time this goes up. My goal this summer was to get to 5K before the start of the regular season, and we're almost at that, so I would greatly appreciate it if you guys would be kind enough to subscribe, right? But let's get right into it. And the Detroit Pistons surprisingly have a few underrated players. B-Ball Paul, Beef Stew, maybe even someone like Malik Beasley, maybe, I guess, right? But I'm gonna go Simone Fontecchio. Unfortunately for him, he was a 27-year-old rookie who was on a terrible team and might be on another terrible team in the Pistons, but he's a very good role player, and when he got to the Pistons, he just started bombing from three. I'm not sure that's going to continue, but his shooting and his size brings a lot of versatility to different lineups on a team with not a lot of shooting on it. I don't feel like I need to give you a full scouting report on Simone Fontecchio, right? My other answer would have been Beef Stew, but I do kind of feel like we talk about Beef Stew a lot, at least amongst the basketball community. But I guess I'll cheat and give you two for the Pistons and Simone Fontecchio and Beef Stew. I think Beef Stew should be looking at Naz Reid and what Naz Reid just did. I don't know if he's ever going to be that. Naz Reid shot 41% from three this year on crazy volume, but too much on the Pistons. Keep it moving. Next up, the Washington Wizards. Now, you got a couple guys here. You might want to go Valanciunas as a Pelicans fan. I'm not doing that. You might want to go Malcolm Brogdon, but I feel like he's one of the Mike Conley guys where we talk about how underrated he is every year, so he can't be underrated at that point. So I'm actually going to go with Marvin Bagley. No, he will never live up to the hype. Yes, we will always talk about him being taken before Luka Doncic, but at this point in his career, he's just a solid backup big. And honestly, if I'm running the Wizards, I want to give Marvin Bagley a real chance. Now again, he's not going to be a star, but if you just look at what he's done over the last 3 years, about 12 points and 6 boards in only 22 minutes per game. And on the Pistons, he had to deal with Jalen Duren, Beef Stew, James Wiseman, who they brought in, right? So he didn't really have free reins. With the Wizards, they got JV, but if the goal is not really to win this year, which I don't know why it would be for the Wizards team, wouldn't you want to give Marvin Bagley a little bit of run? He's only 24 years old. I don't believe this, right? Let me say that on the front end. I don't believe this, but there's a world where he's just a solid player for your team for the next 4 or 5 years. So I would give that a chance over prioritizing JV minutes. That's just me though. Next up, we have the Charlotte Hornets, and my real answer for this is LaMelo, but we're not going to say LaMelo. If you want to know how I feel about LaMelo, I have a recent video. I don't know how, like a couple weeks ago, I made a video about LaMelo. Go watch that video. But I'm finding the bad teams actually might have more underrated players because we just think of them as a bad team. But this team has Trey Mann, they have Josh Green, they have Grant Williams, who somehow is underrated. They have Mark Williams, but we're not going to go with him. That's a little bit unfair. Kind of like LaMelo, if he could stay on the court, I don't think he would be underrated. You could honestly make a real argument that Miles Bridges is underrated, but we're not going to be making that argument right now. We're going to go with Nick Richards, who again, I feel like if he was on a better team, he would be a lot more appreciated. I believe he's a real starting level center in the NBA, maybe a backup on a true contender. Averaged nearly 10 points per game, 8 boards, over a block per game in just 26 minutes. A good free throw shooter, nearly 80% at the rim the last 2 years. Again, it's not exciting, not much to say about Nick Richards to get you so amped up. Just a very solid NBA center, which a lot of teams could use. Unfortunately, he's probably going to be on a bad team again. Although I do believe in the talent on this team, I just don't think LaMelo is going to be healthy again. So probably going to be another disappointing season in Charlotte. Hopefully not, though. Next up, we got the Toronto Raptors. Now, I've been calling Kelly Olynyk underrated for like the last 5 years, so he might fall into the Mike Conley category. But I've had Kelly Olynyk in the trade machine all summer, trying to get him to the Warriors or trying to get him to the Pelicans. This is not the video for it, but I'm predicting a Moses Moody Kelly Olynyk swap somehow. I just see that working out. But I'm gonna go with RJ Barrett. Now, there's kind of been a negative vibe around RJ Barrett. Negative's not the right word, right? But just because he's not Ja Morant and he's not Zion Williamson, we kind of underplay how good he actually is. And he's kind of a rare breed in today's NBA. We don't have a lot of guys that are score first and not, at least very good playmakers or decent playmakers. RJ's not really a playmaker. And if we do have guys like that, it's usually because they are bombing from three. RJ's not really bombing from three. He's an old school type of player. He did average over 4 assists per game as a Raptor, but I feel like that is because Scottie Barnes missed a lot of time. I'm not sure that's going to continue next year. And I'm not even sure RJ Barrett is like a bona fide starter on a lot of teams. He might just be like one of the best 6 men in the NBA. That might be his role because he's an okay shooter. He's an okay finisher. He's an okay defender. He's just okay in a lot of ways, right? But his scoring is still very valuable in the NBA. I think he can be one of your 5 best players, but maybe he's a 6th man going forward. Either way, he's a very good NBA player, and we don't really give him the credit he deserves because he's not Ja Morant and he's not Zion Williamson. And he's still only 24 years old, so the shooting can improve, the defense can improve, the finish, all that can improve, right? He can still get better. But I do understand the skepticism if he's not going to be elite on defense, if he's not going to be a prolific shooter. It is kind of hard to find that role for him, but he can score, and that's still very valuable in the NBA. And a lot of times people forget that. So the Brooklyn Nets, tough one. I can't say Cam Thomas. Everyone knows Cam Thomas is what Cam Thomas is. We're waiting to see what he might be, but for right now, I don't think he's underrated. Everyone knows who Cam Johnson is. Everyone knows who Nick Claxton is. Part of me wants to say Day'Ron Sharpe, but if you can't get more than 15 minutes on this team, I don't know what to say. So I'm gonna go with Dennis Schroeder, I guess, right? Don't feel great about it, but he's still a pretty good perimeter defender. He's made himself to be a pretty good shooter or a decent shooter. I do believe he's one of the better backup point guards in the NBA, although he's probably gonna start, right? I don't have strong feelings about the Brooklyn Nets. I'm sorry, we're gonna go with Dennis Schroeder and we're gonna keep it moving. The Atlanta Hawks. Now, we all know the answer for this one is Trae Young, but the question is, do we want to pick someone else? Because it's Trae Young. And I wouldn't even make a big deal out of it if it was just like a fan discussion, but nah, he didn't make the All-Star team. Well, he didn't make it this year. He made it as an injury replacement. Last year, he didn't make it, and when the votes came out, even the players didn't vote for Trae Young. And this summer, I know the Hawks end up keeping Trae Young, and it seems like, oh, they never wanted to get rid of him. Trae Young didn't even really have a market this summer. That's crazy. So the real answer is no doubt Trae Young. But the other guy I want to mention, you guys might think I'm going Jalen Johnson actually, but I'm going to go with Bogdan Bogdanovic, the other guy in the backcourt with Trae Young. Quietly one of the best shooters in the NBA. I made a video the other day, and I keep promoting myself in these videos, but if I'm not going to do it, who else is going to do it? I made a video the other day titled, "Are These the Greatest Shooters of All Time?" Something like that, right? And I looked up career three-point attempts per game, right? And I got the top 25 per game. All of them pretty much current players. And of that top 25, I looked at who shot the best percentage, right? And Bogdanovic is 8th on that list. Only behind Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Buddy Hield, CJ McCollum, Kyrie Irving, Malik Beasley, and Paul George. Then it's Bogdanovic. I know we think of him as a good shooter, but I'm not sure we think of him as a great shooter, and he actually is. We haven't even talked about him because we've been so focused on Trae Young and DeJounte Murray as potential trade pieces that Bogdanovic might actually be the one a lot of teams are calling for at this trade deadline. Moving on to the Chicago Bulls, and if I were to say you got a player that averaged 16 points, 8 boards, and 6 assists 2 years ago, and that player is only 21 years old, wouldn't you feel like you just got a player that might be a future All-Star? Wouldn't you feel great about that player's potential? Because that player is Josh Giddey. And I was so dumbfounded on the way people were acting with the Caruso trade. You just traded a player on an expiring deal for a player you believe might be an All-Star, who's only 21 years old. Now, if you don't believe in Giddey, that's fine. That's fine. But I don't see how you can argue the thought process. I guess we're so conditioned to think about first-round picks now that you would rather have 2 late first-round picks than take a flyer on a guy that has flashed all-star potential already. He put up those numbers playing next to Shea, playing with someone that averaged 30 points per game. He put up those numbers. And one thing about Giddey, he's not a good shooter, right? By no means is he a good shooter, but he's a willing shooter. He's not a Ben Simmons type of player. He's going to let it fly if you dare him to shoot it. And I do believe he can get to a point where defenses aren't, they're always going to let him shoot it, but they're not going to be so comfortable letting him shoot it. And he was in a situation where he was taking more threes than Shea and J-Dub, at least per 36, right? Because he played less minutes. But when they were on the court, they were relying on Giddey to be the one to take the shots, which is kind of crazy. I know they have to have the ball in Shea's hand more than Giddey's and J-Dub's hand more than Giddey's, although, you know, you would think it might have worked out a little bit more if those other guys shot the ball more, but that's not really the point of this conversation. He's no longer in OKC. Now he's playing with a guard in Kobe White who will let it fly. So Giddey can be on the ball more and have a little bit more space. I've also made several videos about Josh Giddey, and I don't believe the three-point shooting is the main factor into him being a better player. Clearly, if he became a sniper from three, that would help a lot, but it's actually the free throws. He has to learn how to get to the free throw line. He's a physical player, he's a big player. That's something I feel like it can be developed and would be more reliable than his three-point shooting, and right now he doesn't get to the line at all. He hasn't shot more than 2 free throws per game yet in his career. I believe he might be able to get that up to like 5 a game. That's wishful thinking, but if he can do that, I see no reason he can't be putting up 20 points per game, 9 boards, 8 assists, and that player is a borderline all-star. So again, I was just confused by the reaction. I understand the Josh Giddey reaction, I understand the reaction to his name in particular, but him for Caruso, if you're the Bulls, that's a no-brainer to me. Let's say you get 2 late first-round picks for Caruso. What are the odds you draft a player better than Josh Giddey? They're pretty low. And I'm just saying better than Josh Giddey right now, not even talking about what he might be in the future. So to me, it was a no-brainer. That's just me though. Next up, we got the Miami Heat, and I kinda wanna go with Tyler Hero, but we're not gonna do that, you know. Tyler Hero is who Tyler Hero is. Some people like him, some people don't like him, but everyone knows who he is. Terry Rozier, maybe Bam's a little bit underrated. I don't think we have a lot of underrated players on this team. Haywood Highsmith maybe is underrated, but I'm gonna go with Kevin Love. Now, he had a down shooting year, but I'm still gonna give that to Kevin Love. I don't think he's just a bad shooter all of a sudden. And if you look at his rebound percentage, his total rebound percentage, it's just a little bit higher than it was his rookie year. So he's still an elite rebounder. The Miami Heat actually use him more as a passer than majority of his career. A lot of that is DHOs, but they also run some stuff through him in the post. So he's like a super 6-man. I believe he could play a little bit more minutes if they had more, you know, decent perimeter defenders out there. But it's hard to play Kevin Love with Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson. And Terry Rozier is not a terrible defender, but he's a small defender, so it's hard to put Kevin Love in a lot of those lineups. But the Kevin Love, Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler front court to me is one of the more enjoyable groupings to watch in the NBA, because he's someone that can help Bam on the boards, can also space the floor for Bam and Jimmy to run their 2-man game. You know, those two guys aren't really going to space the floor for each other, so to have the other front court player to actually do that is very important to that team, which is why we're kind of hopeful Khalil Ware can be that player. And I'm trying not to do per 36, but for these bench guys, I do feel like it does a decent job of illustrating what they do in their limited amount of time, especially considering a guy like Kevin Love, who used to be an all-star player in the NBA. So per 36, he's averaging 13.2 rebounds per game, or he did last year, right? And that would be 5th in his career per 36. It was his highest assists per game per 36. Again, that doesn't really matter, but it shows you that he's having a huge role on this team when he's in the game. He had a higher usage last year than his first year in Cleveland, which is not saying much, but he's a big part of the offense. So I'm gonna go with Kevin Love. If you guys wanna go Haywood Highsmith, I understand that. Some might say Bam, some might even say Jimmy, but I'm gonna go with Kevin Love. The Philadelphia 76ers. Now, if Kyle Lowry was still on the Miami Heat, I might go with Kyle Lowry, but I'm gonna go with Kelly Oubre. Now, I might be guilty of going underpaid instead of underrated, but when it's coming off of that offseason, I feel like it's justified, right? We're not talking about someone that didn't get a contract 3 years ago and now he's underpaid. No. Teams had a chance to get Kelly Oubre this summer, and he's making $8 million a year. Now, the reason probably being because he's not a good shooter. 32% from 3 for his career, not good at all. But we're talking about a guy that averaged 20 points per game 2 years ago, bought into a role, played great defense, rebounded the ball, blocked shots, did everything Philly could ask him to do besides hit threes, which they should have known he's not going to hit threes, right? But I just believe he's an extremely valuable player in the NBA. I don't want to say he's like a Aaron Gordon, right? Because he's not that level of player. Aaron Gordon is a much more dynamic defender as far as guarding bigger players. I would say Aaron Gordon is a smarter player, but I do believe he can have that function on a team, just that athleticism, high flyer, causing havoc on the court, competing on the boards, getting blocks. He provides a lot of that. Of course, not the passing, but the cutting, the rebounds, the blocking shots. He provides a lot of that. And I believe we'll see a lot of him at the 4 next to Embiid this year. And even though he's been a terrible shooter throughout his career, I don't think of him as a non-shooter for some reason. Maybe that's just me, I don't know. But the idea of Kelly Oubre, Paul George, and Kyle Lowry, who can guard bigger players, being able to switch around Maxey and Embiid, very intriguing to me. Moving on to the Indiana Pacers, another team with a lot of players people might consider underrated. People might even still consider Pascal Siakam underrated. Miles Turner, a guy that's been underrated his whole career, so he doesn't qualify anymore. TJ McConnell falls into that category as well. Nembhard, people are, if anything, we might be overrating him a little bit right now. Not saying he's not awesome, but coming off that playoff run, expectations might be a little bit crazy for him. So I don't think he's underrated at this point. I'm gonna go with Aaron Nesmith. Now, in the regular season, he shot 42% from 3. In the playoffs, he shot 28% from 3. Now, for his career, he shoots 37% from 3. Now, me picking him might be a little bit of wishful thinking, because if you look at this roster, they need the best version of him, and they might be a contender, right? Think about if this team had OG Anunoby instead of Aaron Nesmith. If this team had Jeremy Grant instead of Aaron Nesmith. If they had Mikal Bridges, right? I'm not expecting Nesmith to get to that level, but you guys get the idea. That one spot is what this team is missing. Even a Jaden McDaniels or a Herb Jones, guys that are a little bit more proven as lockdown defenders, and in the case of Herb Jones, can do a lot more off the dribble than Aaron Nesmith has shown so far in his career. But what Nesmith has on those guys is size. Those guys are slender guys. Nesmith has the potential to be one of the best two-way wings in the NBA. And if he can be that, this team is a real contender. But if he's one of these just 20 minutes a night, some nights he has it, some nights he doesn't have it. If he can be consistently one of the best 3-and-D wings in the NBA, I see no reason this team can't be a legitimate contender. And OG Anunoby is the best comp, right? Because OG Anunoby is a bigger guy, right? You could put OG Anunoby on a Tatum, on a Julius Randle. As much as I love Herb Jones, he's a smaller, shorter, and slender guy, right? So Nesmith has the potential to be one of the best defenders in the NBA, and if he can be that again, this team is a contender. Moving on, the Orlando Magic, to me, the easiest one of either conference so far to me, just because name recognition and production is so vast. You know, the difference, right? Nobody really talks about this guy. A lot of NBA fans probably don't even know this guy, but Goga Bitadze to me is the most underrated player in the NBA. He's one of the reasons I feel like Wendell Carter might be moved at some point this year. At the beginning of last year when Wendell Carter was out, he was going absolutely crazy. Last year in November, he averaged 8.7 boards, 1.8 blocks, and 1.0 steals in 24 minutes. He does foul a lot for sure. I've talked about this guy a lot this summer, so you guys can go watch other videos of me talking about him, but I'm comparing him to Isaiah Hartenstein, where he was just a good backup for so many years, and finally he got his shot in New York, and now he got paid. I think Goga is going to go through a similar, career arc. The Cleveland Cavaliers, pretty obvious one. Part of me wanted to go with Craig Porter Jr. and the crazy year he was having last year, but we're going to keep it simple, and we're going to go with Darius Garland, just because the shine off his name is pretty much gone at this point. A lot of people feel like they should move on from him, let Donovan Mitchell run the show, and I'm not saying I disagree with that, but we're still talking about a guy that is an elite three-point shooter and a great passer, and if Donovan Mitchell never joined this team, clearly they wouldn't be as good for sure, but we might be talking about him a lot differently. He's continuously getting hit in the face, lost a lot of weight this year, and even if you consider all that, look at the numbers, his year wasn't that bad. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm not a big Darius Garland guy, but I do believe the talk around his name right now is a little bit ridiculous. The Milwaukee Bucks. And if I can be real with you guys, I don't really have an answer for this team. Chris Middleton, again, is in the Mike Conley category of can be underrated forever. Even though I feel like he's still underrated. Brook Lopez, people know Brook Lopez at this point and how great he is on defense and all that. Bobby Portis gets a lot of love. Dame gets a lot of love. If anything, it might be Giannis on this team that's underrated, but I don't want to say Giannis. That's just a cop-out answer. I don't believe Gary Trent is underrated. Actually, easy answer for me, and we're not even going to stay on this, but easy answer is DeLon Wright. Very good backup point guard. Can play up on defense, can play him with Dame a little bit. So DeLon Wright, not sexy there, keep it moving, DeLon Wright. The New York Knicks, another easy one for me. And if you guys don't believe it's this player, then that just goes to what I'm saying. But I'm gonna go with Julius Randle. I've never seen a two-time All-NBA player be more disrespected than Julius Randle. Actually, I have. It is Cat and it's Randle. Two guys are always in trade rumors. Regardless of what you feel like his fit on this team is, that's another question, but Julius Randle has been awesome at basketball the last 5 years. Now, I'm not gonna act like I don't get why people have the trepidation about his fit on this team, but I believe in the talent. I don't like that Mitchell Robinson is already out. I don't love that. But I believe Randle can compete on the glass, can move the ball, can take open threes, and get in his ISO bag when they need him to. So yeah, I'm gonna go Julius Randle. I don't think I need to explain to you guys why Julius Randle is good at basketball. Some people don't like his game. Some people love his game. Me personally, I don't like his game. I can tell you guys right now, when Julius Randle was a rookie, there is no way I thought he would be this good at basketball. I didn't believe in the style. I still don't love the style, but you can't argue with results. He's a two-time All-NBA player and people talk about him like he's a bum. And finally, we have the Boston Celtics. Another easy one for me, and we are going with Big Al Horford. Shooting 43% from three the last 2 years while getting you a block per game, while defending the best bigs in the NBA, defending Kevin Durant in series, going toe-to-toe with Giannis in a Game 6 on the road. I know that was a couple years ago at this point. It didn't really stand out last playoff run because they didn't really have to go through anybody. But the year before, again, defending Giannis, defending Kevin Durant, that Game 1 in Oakland or in San Francisco was the only reason that was a tough series. If he doesn't go crazy in that Game 1, it's probably not a long series. And I know Al Horford in his career has been much more than a role player, but his time in Boston, he's been one of the greatest role players of all time. This might make people upset, and I know he doesn't have 4 rings, but to me, he's right there with Iguodala. He's right there as far as impact on winning, as far as being a great teammate. He's right there with Iggy to me. He's right there with Lamar Odom in that back-to-back run. I won't say like Manu or anything, but to me, he's right there. So I'm gonna go with Al Horford, and that's where we're gonna call the video. Let me know in the comments down below the ones you feel like I got right, the ones you feel like I got wrong. And like I said, we are about to hit 5K, trying to hit 5K before the year starts. At the time of this, we're about 350 away. So I would greatly appreciate it if you guys subscribe, like, comment, subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm out. Peace.